When was the very first time you noticed any mental health symptoms? And then how long did it take from that point to receive any mental health services? According to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, the average delay between the onset of mental health symptoms and treatment is 11 years. Routine mental health screenings beginning at a young age can influence how early a person receives support and intervention. Welcome to Normalize the Conversation. I'm your host, Francesca Reicheter, and today I'm joined by Paige Pontrelli, a representative from Mental Health Technologies. Join us as we delve into the current landscape on mental health assessments and the significance of routine mental health assessments for the early detection of mental health symptoms and proactive intervention.
Paige, thank you so much for joining me today. I am really excited for our conversation. But before we begin, I just want to check in with you. How are you really?
Doing great, considering Christmas is this weekend. I'm doing good. A little crazy, but all in all, okay.
This time of year can be really stressful especially if we don't check in with ourselves and just make time for ourselves in the midst of all that stress.
Exactly. And trying to unwind if possible, right?
Is it possible?
I know.
But it's really great that we're able to have these conversations and be honest with it, because a lot of times I think of messaging in the movies too with the holidays and how much fun it is to have all these parties and buy all these presents and like have perfect Christmas, and to know that it's not that easy. It is stressful and we're all in this together. We're not the only ones stressed out about it. I think really helps. So, moving on to our conversation topic, we're going to talk about health assessments. And before we begin doing that, I want to learn more about Mental Health Technologies as a company and what they're doing differently about these assessments.
So Mental Health Technologies, our acronym is MHT. So if you hear us saying MHT a lot, that's what we kind of use, is a tool medical practices use to help screen their patients for mental health, substance abuse, ADHD. We have a wide range of assessments, over 50 different assessments, dependent on what the doctor or the provider needs to screen their patients for. We have the ability to help the doctor or the provider screen their patients for a wide range of mental health symptoms.
I love that, because growing up, I remember in the primary care office, I think I was more so getting ready to age out when they first started doing these behavioral health assessments. And it was like, are you depressed? Are you anxious? Do you have thoughts of suicide? And I remember getting that, and no one had ever talked to me about mental health before. So it was kind of like what I'd seen in the movies. And you say something, you're going to get locked up and taken away. And my mom was sitting there, and no one had talked to her about it really. So she was like, be careful what you answer, they'll take you away. So what did I do? I was like, nope, not depressed. Nope, not anxious. No, not having any thoughts. And no conversation ever came from it. It was just this iPad that they gave you to click no, and that was it. And for those who know my story, I ended up struggling in a psych ward following 3 suicide attempts, and had these assessments and screenings been available to me in a way that was different than check yes or no and let's never talk about it, it could have been so much different for me.
And that's what we're trying to do at Mental Health Technologies. We are trying to identify how a person is feeling and what they're going through early identification, and then also help stratify their symptoms, and then what type of care do they need, and that care ranges from, maybe, like you said, you got to a point where you needed a psych ward, but maybe if you would have been screened earlier and answered and felt comfortable answering honestly, you may have benefited from therapy or different treatments that could have helped prior to you got to that state, right?
Absolutely. And what I love about MHT is that it's kind of customized based on the person, their symptoms, and the doctor that they're at. So it's not the same like 3 questions every time. It's not necessarily 3 questions that's yes or no. And it helps normalize it in a different way and make it a little less scary, because sometimes when the only questions are like, are you depressed and are you having thoughts of killing yourself, that can be a lot for someone who's never had a mental health conversation before. Those are really big terms to throw out for someone who's maybe kind of exposed to the mental health stigma and has never had a conversation. So by customizing it, that it's not just these two questions standard every single time, it really helps you understand these different symptoms people may be experiencing, normalizing, hey, these are symptoms people have, and we can talk about it. And then actually getting directed to resources based on your answers really makes a big difference.
Yeah, and the way mental health technologies works, typically the patient is sent the assessments prior to their appointment via text message or email. And so then they're in the comfort of their own home while answering these questions. So they don't feel the pressure of someone staring at them or waiting for them to answer them. They can take it when they feel comfortable and then hopefully answer more honestly, because they feel more comfortable in the situation when they are answering the questions.
I love that.
I actually have an example of, I took I have two children, they're teenagers, and last year I took them to their just annual wellness visit, and we did it together, and I have a boy and a girl a year apart, and they were together in the exam room, and the nurse handed my son a piece of paper laminated, basically saying the questions that you said. Do you feel depressed? Do you feel harming yourself? And she said, can you give me your answers? Well, I'm sitting next to him and his sister is also sitting next to him. And he didn't really know how to answer the questions. So I tried to explain it to him, wanting him to answer honestly, and then she said, okay, give the piece of paper to your sister, and okay, now you answer the questions, how you feel. And I just felt that wasn't the best way to assess both of my children's mental health, because they were in the room with their mom and their sibling. And I didn't feel it was a safe space for them to answer honestly. And I do wish that maybe they would have given them an iPad and let them be by themselves answering the questions. So hopefully they would have been more honest with the answers, because as a parent, especially working in this industry, I want to know how my kids are doing. I want to check in on them, and I want the provider to check in on them. And so I just felt there was probably a better way for the pediatrician to assess their health.
Yeah, it's really nerve-wracking as a child, first of all, to be asked these questions. And then the added layer, I know for me, was always, I don't want to upset my mom. Like, I don't want my mom to feel bad thinking that she did something wrong that I feel this way, right? So it's like, to this day, I feel like I would maybe, but I don't know if I even would in front of my mom be like, yeah, I am feeling depressed, because I hate seeing that like look on her face where she's like, can't fix it for you. Like, like that mom wants to fix everything and do everything to help you and they can't. And I think putting that on the kids, especially at a young age, don't want to upset your mom. So are you going to say it in front of your mom? Are you going to say it in front of your sibling? I don't know if I would say it in front of my younger brother either. And that's a big thing, is making it safe, that not that they don't feel comfortable necessarily saying it to their parents, but it can also be a really fragile experience, and letting them know that we can talk about it. And then if you want help talking to your parents about it, that's okay too. But we're actually here to assess you and not to put you on the spot in an uncomfortable position of, how is that going to make you feel then saying it in front of your loved ones?
Right. And that's, I think, what MHT is trying to do, is help bring awareness to it and make it a standard of care, just assessing every patient when they come in, just as if you would take someone's blood pressure, let's check in with their mental health.
I love that, because it's been left out for so long. It's been really separate from physical health, and they can go hand in hand a lot of times too. These physical symptoms that we experience, maybe I'm getting a lot of stomach aches, and that could actually be connected to some anxiety. And if I learn how to manage these anxious thoughts that I'm having, these behaviors, then maybe I can get some relief in how my stomach's feeling. Or headaches can be caused from these high levels of stress. So normalizing that they go hand in hand, and if we can take someone's blood pressure, we can take their temperature, put a little heart monitor on them, we can hand them an iPad and have them answer some questions and then be ready to answer any questions they have and offer them some support.
Exactly. And that is another thing that MHT does is once a patient does maybe indicate that they have a level of depression or a level of anxiety, we can automate that referral, or we can help direct them to different treatment options dependent on how they answer the questions or how they score. Or if they say they're suicidal, we can direct them to the 988 suicide hotline webpage. So there's a lot of different things we can do with our technology that can help the patient and direct them to receive the care that they need. And that care is different for everyone, right? So based on their scores or based on how they answer a certain question, then we can direct them to the appropriate level of care, or at least introduce it to them and open the conversation.
I love that because when you answer these questions and it's like, yes, I am struggling, I finally admit it, and then there's no follow-up, that's so much worse, right? If you don't know what to do, it's like, okay, I've admitted that I am struggling with these thoughts. Now what?
Now what? And when we are talking to primary care doctors or pediatricians or doctors that don't specialize in mental health, when we introduce this concept of screening all of your patients to see where they're at with their mental health or with their substance abuse or anything, it scares them a little bit because that's not their specialty. And so, okay, what do we do once we start screening and then we do identify these patients? What do we do with them? And so when we're talking to primary care or pediatricians, we always have a behavioral health partner that we introduce to them so that they know, okay, if I identify a patient, I know where I can send that patient that will take, that can have different treatments that can help anyone. They'll take anyone's insurance, they have availability. So we're always trying to connect those dots so that the patient is getting the care they need if they do indicate they might be depressed or might be suicidal or might have anxiety. So then we can direct them and then they can get the care, sooner rather than later.
Connecting with a behavioral health professional is amazing, especially when you're looking at, are they available? Do they take insurance? Because a lot of times when it comes to getting help with mental health, it can be really inaccessible because there is a high demand and a low supply. It can be really expensive. So by making it so accessible and actually bridging that gap and connecting people really takes it so much further. I was amazed by just the resources part, but to really bridge that gap and give people an actual referral source is incredible.
Yeah, we're doing it in we are doing it in a lot of primary cares, but one primary care specific, they screen their patients, and then if their patient indicates they might have depression, anxiety, we ask them, our technology knows, and we ask them another question. You may benefit from speaking to a mental health professional. Would you like to be contacted by our behavioral health partner? If the patient says yes, we do a couple of things. One, we automate that referral right to that behavioral health partner so they know this patient at this primary care is struggling and needs help. We also can alert their provider, their primary care provider, before they're coming in. Okay, Francesca's coming in. She indicated she might have a level of depression. So then the primary care provider is alerted of that. And then we also, when you're done taking the assessment on your phone, we redirect you to a landing page where you can schedule an appointment with that behavioral health provider right then and there on your phone. So it gives you the opportunity to take your care in your own hands and schedule that right away.
The immediacy of it is so important because, again, mental health services can be very inaccessible and people can wait forever to even find someone. and then wait forever on a waiting list. So to actually be like, we've connected you, and here you can go ahead and schedule an appointment really does help, because finding somebody is so overwhelming. Finding a therapist, finding a provider. I know that for me, I can feel really overwhelmed, and I'll be on psychologytoday.com going through and looking at all these different therapists. And it's like, how do I choose one? What do I do? How do I call them? Sometimes it's terrifying to call. I don't know why. I feel like, I don't know, I'm 25. I shouldn't be scared to call a doctor anymore. Yet I'm still like, Mom, help me out here. So it's really great to actually be brought to a page, to a website where you can go on, schedule that appointment immediately, right when you have gotten to that space of admitting I do need support, instead of having a lot of time to think about it and overthink and then maybe not reach out.
And that really is what we're trying to do, is because the more time that goes by, it's the less likely the patient is going to reach out, or, and we do see that when we automate that referral and the behavioral health partner or provider then tries to contact the patient and, says, oh, you indicated you might be interested in our services. A lot of times they do say, oh, I don't remember answering that, or I've changed my mind. So getting to the patient sooner rather than later is definitely beneficial.
Yeah, and it just kind of breaks some of that stigma as well, right? Like, you're struggling, there's support, here's how you get it, instead of having to figure it out alone. Because a lot of times we don't want to ask people, right? If we don't know that it's something we can talk about, hopefully we get to a place where we've normalized the conversation on mental health and there's no stigma and people are openly talking about it. But the reality of it is, a lot of people don't feel safe yet. A lot of people don't know how to respond to someone who opens up to them. So by making it as seamless as possible, without having to force people into conversations they're just not ready for, is really helpful. Not to say that someone shouldn't reach out to a loved one for support. Absolutely. If you feel safe and comfortable, please reach out to your loved ones, because you deserve to have that immediate support. But if you don't, it shouldn't be the only option to have to start asking your loved ones for what to do, when there's so many resources available and you're really creating that direct link.
We're trying to help identify people early, get them the help they need before it becomes catastrophic, right? And before it becomes to a point where, where there's no turning back, or.
Yeah, that is where real prevention lies, right? It's that early detection. It's talking about it before someone's struggling. It's actually offering intervention and services before someone is just barely hanging on. And if we can do that at a young age and start it in those primary care pediatrician offices, people can grow up knowing, like, hey, it's okay to struggle and to say I'm struggling and to get support, instead of growing up with this idea that you have to be resilient and figure it all out on your own and hold it all inside and you can't talk about it. Real prevention lies in changing that narrative completely and destroying it, so that people can say, like, I am struggling. I am having a lot more depressive thoughts lately. And it could be something as simple as, I need some support in building affirmations. I need some support in building coping skills. It could be something as more serious, like, I need some medication. I need more routine therapy. I need support. But if we don't give people the chance to talk about it beforehand, no one's going to get that support they need until way later. And when it could have been something more simple as learning how to process, learning how to express, learning how to cope, it could then be life or death moments. We need to have that early detection. So I am just all for these assessments.
Like I said, I have 2 high schoolers and I have a freshman boy, and he was, I felt like he was off and he wasn't 100%. He was kind of getting in trouble at school, did some things out of his character, which wasn't like, and I know he's a freshman, and as you know, there's a lot of emotions, you're getting puberty, there's, so much going on, but I just felt he was off. And I actually called the school and talked to the principal, and I said, can he see the counselor? Because I don't think anything's going on, but I don't know. Would he tell me, he's kind of doing some things out of character. And he did see the counselor, and I reached out to the counselor also and said, can you just check in with him? I mean, we have this resource at school, and So it's ending that stigma. I was telling both of my kids, it's okay to go see the counselor. If you're having issues or you're having problems, it's okay to open up and talk to someone, because they do have tools, or they can teach you, you said, coping mechanisms, or just, breathing exercises if you're feeling overwhelmed, or take a walk or get some exercise, or there's just so much you can do before it gets to that point, right? And so I do try to have my kids, or teach them, it's okay, it's okay to go talk to someone, because I know they're not going to talk to me.
That's amazing. And I hope more parents take your lead in calling the school, calling the counselor, and asking to set up that appointment. And what I love is that it wasn't, tell me what happens. It's just, please continue to check in, right? It's, I just want my kid to have this resource, to know that there's someone out there that can point them in the right direction, and who cares, who's going to follow up, who's going to be there, that sense of consistency. So I think that one thing that's really hard, I'm not a parent, so I can't say, but I would say what I would think is really hard is not knowing what to do, and to feel like you have to solve it for them. That's what I know my mom's always saying. The hardest part is she wants to solve it, and there's so many times where she can't give me a solution. But to know that there's someone who can actually offer you the resources you need in this safe space, and I want to encourage you to reach out, really makes such a difference.
And I think everyone, like you said, ending the stigma and normalizing the conversation is so that everyone knows there are resources out there, and there are people you can talk to. If you are in, elementary school or middle school or high school, there are school psychologists and school counselors for a reason, and wanting to get it out there that it's okay to go, to talk to someone and get the help if you're not feeling right. And even for adults, like there's treatments out there, there's therapy, there's so many apps now that are really good that help you, that can help you. And so there's just a lot out there, and hopefully more people will start reaching out and helping themselves prior to, where it goes too far. Where it could be as simple as, like you said, daily affirmations.
Exactly. There's so many resources available, and there's so many tools that we can start implementing into our routines at a young age. And by talking about it, we can help so many more people access those resources, use those small tools. We said daily affirmations. That's something we can teach kids at a young age, to say, I'm kind, I'm brave, I'm smart, instead of constantly questioning themselves and wondering, am I good enough? Because if 5-year-old me learned to say, I'm smart enough, I'm kind enough, I'm good enough, instead of saying, why am I not always perfect on my homework? I'm coloring outside the line, something's wrong with me, right? It's these small messages that we put into kids' minds at a young age. If we just started with that, I am good enough, we can really make such a difference. Or those coping skills, right? When I'm feeling overwhelmed, like, school is overwhelming. Growing up, I was so afraid of getting an answer wrong, or getting called on in class, right? And having to talk in front of people. But what if I learned that I could take a couple of deep breaths before I have to read out loud or do a presentation? What if I learned that I can ask to go to the bathroom and just walk up and down the hallway maybe a little bit to get some of that anxious energy out? What if I learned that there were things I could do at a young age instead of letting it all build up? And that's why we need to be connecting people to resources. We need to be talking about it, because we really can teach small tools that seem so small and innocent and minor at a young age that changes every single aspect of someone's mental health growing up. I'm just amazed by these mental health assessments and the changing of it, because like I said, growing up for me, it was really frustrating when it was just 2 questions, that was it, and there was no follow-up.
Within the mental health space, when in behavioral health clinics, there's so many advanced treatments that are really good options for patients that maybe have tried 2 or 3 or 4 different meds and they just haven't worked. And there's a lot of different treatments available, like TMS, which is transcranial magnetic stimulation, or there's Spravato, or there's other treatments. So when within a behavioral health clinic, if they're regularly screening their patients just to make sure to see how are they doing on the meds, how are they doing on this, and if they score above a certain threshold, then we also can ask them or offer them advanced treatments. So if they score above, typically a 15 on the depression screening is, then they might be a candidate for TMS. So they score above a 15, we can ask them, would you be interested in learning more about an advanced treatment for your depression called TMS? And if the patient says yes, then their provider and their clinic knows that they're interested in learning more about advanced treatments, and then they can reach out to that patient and educate them on that treatment and see if it would be a good fit for them. So there are ways that we can help also direct patients to just receive, like I said, if meds aren't working, let's try something else. So it's just that regular screening also, and regularly checking in with them to make sure that what they are doing is working. And if it's not working, maybe offering them something else and finding a different treatment that might be better fit for them.
That's so important. And it really empowers the patient to say, there are other options available, and we can connect you with your provider who's going to learn that you are interested and give you some psychoeducation, but also you can ask about it, because a lot of times people just don't know that there's other options. They think psychotherapy and medication are the only two options. And those are really great options, but there's so many more options. And just because one or both of those don't work for you doesn't mean that there's no hope. So by actually giving people names of different resources that they can decide, I do want to learn more, or I don't want to learn more about it right now, that's okay too. But empowering them with the choice to hear more about what's available to them and actually get to learn more, instead of, again, thinking it's just these two options, doesn't work, that's it, there's no hope for me.
There's not a one size fits all, right? Every single person is different. And so every single person might benefit from something different. So it's just educating them. There are different resources, there are different options for you. There is hope, just letting them know that, like you said, it's not just these meds or psychotherapy. There's so much more out there that can help everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. As we are wrapping up, how can providers learn more about mental health technologies and maybe get set up to utilize your assessments as well?
Our website is mhtech.com. That's htech.com. We have social media. You can follow us on LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram. MHT is a great tool to help direct patients to receive the care they need. We know that care is not the same for everyone, so we try to customize and direct the patient to receive the best care option for them.
Thank you so much for listening to Normalize the Conversation. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. This podcast is an initiative of Inspiring My Generation, focusing on normalizing the conversation, bringing education and awareness to the forefront, and amplifying global voices to spark change and hope. Inspiring My Generation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization on a mission towards suicide prevention through awareness, conversation, education, and support. Connect with us on Instagram at Inspiring My Generation and visit our website inspiringmygeneration.org to learn more about our work and how you can make a difference.